Hello all! Welcome once again to the Kindred UMC pre-recorded live show! Coming to you live pre-recordedly from Kindred Studio A here in my front room. I am Chris Hayden, I am the pastor.
Hi, I'm Courtney Young, I'm the Director of Community Engagement.
And I'm Preston the infection.
Gross.
Thing. Yeah.
That like kind of rhymes in a weird way.
I know, I
don't like that.
How am I gonna...
That could rhyme in a hip-hop song today.
That could be his hip-hop name.
The infection, I have all the inflection. All of it. And that's all I got for now.
Yeah.
You're trying it.
And don't object.
Can you spit mad verses?
Kinda, sometimes.
No.
No, there's camera.
Yeah, it sounds like no.
There's a camera and I'm white, I can't do it unless it's the news.
Alrighty then.
Back to you, Bill. Okay.
I would like to get into it. This is our final axiom.
Oh.
Oh wow, that's sad.
There's a secret
so
one.
far, who knows? Maybe there'll be more.
Is there a secret one? Oh.
And there's a secret one that that once you've given enough money, we'll take you into a secret room.
Oh, that
and
sounds
we'll hand
great.
you a piece of paper with a briefcase, so you have to attach to yourself. I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with Xenu.
Oh. Wear your robe.
You're giving too much away.
Yeah. Don't ever say that word. I was just watching some of Leah, what's her face from King of the Queens.
I love her.
And she did the
Scientology.
Anyway, I digress. So before I label the axiom, and if you've listened to our song, I bet you have a really good idea of what it's about.
Entropy?
No, you dumb shit. How many times in that song did I have to tell you?
It's energy. We're talking about energy consumption.
If you watch the song, this will all be funny.
And emphasizing.
Let's read the text, and then we'll talk about the axiom. So this is from Matthew chapter 22, verses 34 through 40. It goes like this. This is approaching the crucifixion. This is getting to the end of the book of Matthew, you know. So when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, Jesus had embarrassed publicly all the lawmakers, all the Hebrew lawmakers.
This was after the writing in the sand thing? Or another time?
That's in John.
Okay.
This is a different book.
But it's another embarrassing of the Pharisees.
But it
happens a few times.
Yeah. Okay. It's kind of his thing. The Sadducees. So after he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, or rabbi, which commandment in the law is the greatest? He said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So, first of all, we should state that this is not an unusual text. This is from the Old Testament. It's called the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. But there is also something a little kind of shitty that Jesus is doing here when they say, because they're trying to trap him with what's the greatest law? Because they know that there's some inherent kind of contradiction, and they're trying to trap him. That's always the idea. And so they say, what's the greatest law? And he's like, the greatest law? Well, it's love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and also love your neighbor as yourself. Like, he's intentionally joining them to, again, embarrass the Sadducees, because his whole point is, you guys treat people like shit. Like, you are not following the law because you don't treat people well. You don't treat them lovingly or graciously or mercifully. So he's, even though this is a very short and very straightforward text, it also comes with all of the normal things when Jesus engages lawmakers, when he's talking about this, hey man, if you want to be tight with God, you have to love people. There's no way to separate it. You want to be highfalutin church people. Well, do you love people? And I mean all of them. Do you love all the people? And if the answer is no, you've got work to do. And quit pretending that you are so much higher above everyone until you get that shit worked out. Like, and he just kind of keeps on hitting this over and over and over again. Now, of course, this is, it's like a common law or rule in pretty much every faith. Like Hindu, Islam, Judaism, you name it, you know. And we call it the golden rule. It exists in pretty much every major faith, even in satanic worship. There is a golden rule, like treat people the way you would like to be treated. And that there's something about this that it's not just a Christian thing. It pervades all of human culture and human society. It seems to be the fundamental thing. So, all of that brings me to our final and maybe most important to me axiom, which is practice curious empathy. And then functionally with open questions. And I'm considering, I still haven't decided yet about adding what we talked about with John Legg when he was a guest, the honest questions. So, okay, so first of all, can you just comment on the idea of empathy? Like what, because believe it or not, some people don't actually know what that word really, really means. What do you think of, what does it mean when you hear the word empathy?
So when I did youth ministry for 3 years, that scripture specifically was one that I would talk a lot about with my students because not specifically this wording, but this concept was like a big thing in youth group for my kids. And the way I would always talk to my students about it is we have to be for other people and not against them. So like it's so easy to like sit there and talk against the person to the left of you, when instead maybe try rewiring your brain to think about how can I be for that other person. That doesn't always mean that you agree with them. That doesn't always mean...
So what challenges that? What gets in the way of that, particularly with teenagers? Because I think teenagers are kind of more, they're unadulterated, quite literally. Right. Unadulterated versions of us. You know?
Sure. I would say number one, insecurity. With teenagers in particular, there's so much insecurity and lack of sense of self and frustration with comparison trap and all of that gets in the way.
So comparison trap. Mm-hmm. I think there's some... I agree. I remember the feelings of if I'm for that person, then they will get more than me. And then I will be at the bottom and I don't want to be at the bottom.
And there's a social hierarchy.
In whatever, like social points, or quite literally like in finances or resources. Yep. Like there is something that's a little scary about that.
I think social media has completely taken over the world too and made the comparison trap even easier to fall into.
Yeah.
I'd argue way earlier, like industrialization. Like speaking lower of your coworker.
Oh, so, well. We want to do a history. You're absolutely right.
In a work environment saying, I deserve that job more, I do more work. You can literally tell based off the stats. And they ask again, well, what do you think of this person in this position? If this person were above you in this position, would you care for it? And you having lizard brain, no, I deserve that position, versus a yes or no that they're really asking for. Being an honest person. It gets blown past, and most of the time, whoever you are don't get the job, and the other person does, and now you have spite and resentment and all kinds of whatever shit towards that, because you couldn't come to terms with yourself thinking, there's no way my friend can be in charge of me, or whatever, this, that, or the other. But I think a work environment, too, is sort of like the preteen age thinking. It's still like getting along with
the
others.
idea of being seen as less than,
correct,
or not as good as your neighbor.
Any environment where there is a competitive, literally a survival competitive thing, like it does become difficult.
Yeah, and with the teens, it was like the more social thing of like I could be,
and especially in high school and middle school.
Yeah.
That shit actually feels like life or death.
Right.
It really does feel like life is on the line. So that is, but it also, so that leads us into that happens as adults. Like that still happens as adults. Like
carries. Yeah.
Yeah. Like so what I kind of want to call out is I think there is a false assumption in most people's brains that you grow out of it. And you kind of don't.
No.
Not naturally anyway. Like it actually takes, and this is something it really is rooted in almost everything we do here. These are things that take practice. And that's why the first word in this axiom is practice.
Yeah.
It's not a thing that naturally comes all by itself to most people.
Yeah.
There are like some Andy Griffith types out there, that they're kind and they just naturally get it, and that's how they think, and wonderful, and they're amazing. But also, the rest of us have a hard time because there is a fear that if I start to work for other people, then there will be less for me. And that's a very hard fear to overcome. And I think what I'm getting at is like, let yourself off the hook from that guilt. Don't let that guilt prevent you from getting into the problem. If the problem is like, I actually don't know how to empathize well, I don't listen well, I don't know how to be for that person, I am scared that there's going to be less for me. A lot of people won't engage that because they're not supposed to, because that makes them a bad person. It's like, no, there's no such thing as a bad person. I mean, unless you're fucking killing people like for pleasure, get out of the idea that there's a bad person and that you might be one. It's not the case. This is humans. This is human beings. We all have this stuff. Don't let that prevent you from getting in there and cooperating with something that's calling you to more.
Well, that's really hard. There's usually layers to that too. Like, you can't just take yourself off the hook without other hooks being taken off of. Like if you're in, this is a funny analogy, if you're in a hook store and there's just a bunch of fishing lines with hooks hanging down, you're gonna get caught on a few of them. You've got to take off your sleeves first, or the hooks off the sleeves first, to get to your chest or whatever.
Yeah, well, and that's risky.
So, yes.
I think is part of it too.
Of course, because your arm's also moving with other hooks there. So like other people guilting
other
you into...
Other stuff's going to come up.
Yes, so like having a mother guilt, or having a father guilt, or having an...
It requires you being vulnerable to more hurt possibly.
Like you're still living life while this ponderance is... You don't just go off to a monastery and get to be quiet and pick cabbage and stuff.
Just go and be quiet for like 8 months, and then you'll come out and you'll be perfect.
You can think about everything. No, you're still living, you're still working.
Well, and it's risky because when you try it for the first time, like when you try to emphasize and it's not something that you're good at because it's a practice.
Did you just say emphasize?
Yeah, I did on purpose. I really did on purpose just to get that reaction. But it's a skill that you have to practice. And that means that likely it's going to be clunky and you're not going to do it perfectly. And you might you might
embarrass yourself.
Right. Yeah. And
you're likely to.
That's what's so risky about it is not only are you putting yourself out there and being vulnerable in that way, but you might have to ditch the eloquence or ditch the perfectly worded thought or the perfect question.
Well, that's where curiosity comes in, which is like, I was talking about this with someone earlier. Who was it? It doesn't matter. But like a dream journal. It's like having a crazy dream and you're like, oh, I remember all the emotions, but I can't even think of the images that happened or like who was in it. And it really doesn't matter. It's kind of based off of what you've seen through the day and a lot of other things, neurochemicals. But while writing in the dream journal, looking back 2 weeks later and going, I had that same exact dream 2 weeks after, or like what, or that kind of thing of just having something to base out of, but there's no like erasing, you just write it down like raw, like everything comes out. I think it's what curiosity is to me, at least. Just getting it out, really. It's like a group of people and the question needs to be asked, and I always say this, like ask the stupid question because 98% of the people in the room also want to ask it. So get it out. It's the curiosity that kills the cat. Kill the cat. Well, I hate cats.
So there, so that was an intentional, it was definitely a strategic placing of the word.
Yeah.
It's not just try and feel what they're feeling. It is to allow your own curiosity, like lean into your curiosity, feed your curiosity about what the other person is feeling. And then again, the mechanic of with open questions, like with honest questions, like
I was gonna say, even if it feels selfish, like even if it's like I kind of just want to know, like what is this?
And there, there's all these weird academic debates about like, well, if you're doing something good for someone, doesn't it make you feel good? So is it really for them?
Right.
Like, well, fuck you, get out of here. I don't care. Like, how about let's all just do good?
Let's all just try our best.
Yeah. How about whatever puts more good in the world?
No one
is
likes
good,
that.
Like so if it makes you feel good, do it. Then do it selfishly. I don't care. You know what? If feeding homeless people is selfish, then go ahead. Do it. Fewer hungry people in the world
is that
good.
what people get tripped up on? Is that the thing?
A lot of, well, I think these are So okay, so
It's a common trope.
I think there's two major things that really get in the way of this. One, I'll label them both, and then we can talk about them a little bit because we only got 5 minutes. So one is people. It is vulnerable to be in your heart space, and empathy requires you to be in a feelings heart space. Second, the desire to solve the problem rather than to, particularly when the problems are fairly unsolvable. And maybe those two things are really combined because solving the problem is just a way of staying in your head rather than being in your heart. But these two things are the things that I see most that get in the way of trying to really do this.
A huge example is being rich. Money's going to solve every problem you have, right? And finally, the problem's solved, and then you see
and now you've got all these other existential problems.
Well, existential problems.
What do I even be now?
Yes, I was going to say a lonely man sitting on his pile of money in his house. What?
How do I even do this? How do I live? How do I exist? And what do I think? And how do I be?
I think it comes back to risk too. Like if I can't solve your problem while talking to you, then what am I putting myself out there for?
Well, especially as a supporter, as a type 2,
right?
The idea that's if this isn't going to actually solve the what am I good for then? What is the point of this?
Am I now going to be disliked and not wanted because I couldn't fix your problem?
And I think there's a version of that in just about everybody. For me, there is something about the I really do, in my heart of hearts, I really do want the world to be better. It's what gets me in trouble when I talk about black people and policing. I find myself in a difficult conversation a lot of times because I'm not doing a good job of empathizing. I'm genuinely trying to solve a scientific logistic problem. And what actually is going on in the conversation I'm having is it's not a debate about what are best methods. It's somebody who's grieving, and I'm not seeing them for who they are. I'm trying to fix a problem. And then that's a big scale thing. And then the classic example is that church pastors been using forever is a wife who comes home from her day at work and complains about something, and the husband can't. It's kind of a trope. It's kind of like a, and there is some generalities about women live in their heart and men live in their heads and that kind of thing. I think there's some truth to that, whatever. But the point is, all humans will escape to their head. All humans, man, woman, whatever, you will escape to your head when it becomes vulnerable. That's what we do. That is what happens. It's far more difficult, but far more rewarding, and I would argue far more loving and compassionate and life-giving to stay in the heart space and not necessarily solve the problem, but to genuinely make space, again, curious empathy with open questions. Wow, I don't understand your reaction. Help me understand. What's going on here? This seems like it really upset you. What's going on? How are you feeling? Can you name the feeling? And then when the feeling comes up, to really be okay, I remember feeling angry. I remember feeling sad. I have had similar feelings. That's how that feels for you. Tell me more. Let's get in it together. And it's a weird, magical thing, but almost all the time, that is what wins the day. Way more than because the person who is in the problem already knows so much more about how to solve it than you ever will.
And they've probably tried to solve it already.
Yeah. Or, how about in a worst case scenario if they shut down there too? If you approach and they go, we're not talking about this. Even there is the seed's been planted type of thing. So the next time you talk to them or the next time they talk about it with someone else, they go, someone else brought this up that I feel like I should talk about, and now I should bring it up.
Well,
even if it's like an objection to it, and you feel like, well, I didn't even help that person there in the first place.
Well, and I think that you're pairing it nicely with like make requests, not demands.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'm not demanding that you tell me.
Yeah.
But I'm just asking, like, if you would like, I would get into this hole with you. You know, it's like that kind of a feel.
Right.
And it again, that's almost like always the better, more loving way. You know, don't get me wrong. Of course, there's our whole society and evolution. Like we're built on scientifically being able to find solutions to real problems. So I'm not against that at all. I think what I would like to emphasize is particularly in spiritual heart work, and especially when it comes to like trying to follow and find the heart of God, which is what essentially we're talking about. The real essence here is that we operate far more in that let's solve the problem than we do in the, hey, let's grieve the loss, let's celebrate the victory, let's really feel like we tend to choke down the, like, hey, that was amazing. Oh, well, you know, like we're supposed to be humble and we're supposed to, you know, stiff upper lip a little bit, you know. And then like, oh my God, your dog died. That's the worst thing. Like, that's horrible. And like, oh, well, you know, the dog, you know, he was old and that's it. Like, we just constantly operate in this place of diminishing our heart and staying in our head.
Industrialized again.
Yeah, it's
100%. Shut it down. Become a robot.
It's the Enlightenment. It's the Industrial Revolution. It's the scientific era. And again, not to speak poorly of those things, they have brought us miracles of technology and just amazing, wonderful progress.
I was going to say for objective truths like clean water that we need for our bodies.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. But in our current setting, in our current culture, we have just swung the pendulum so far into our heads. And what almost always, the thing that you can actually offer to your neighbor in a loving way that they would actually need and use and benefit from is not a solution to the problem, but a genuine, like, how is that? What does that feel like? Do you need someone? Do you want me to hang around and so you don't have to be alone right now? Can I just be there with you? We don't have to talk about anything. Like whatever it is, you know, like this curious empathy is a real. I think. I mean, there's a reason it's like the big finale. You know, it is the thing that actually can help people. So. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Not entropy, but empathy.